Good morning, Dan and Amy. Well, this presents a very interesting story. She was born and raised a devout Muslim in Cairo and Gaza, the daughter of an Islamic martyr. Nonie Darwish had Islamic values ingrained into her from a very young age. She learned what every child of a devout Muslim was taught. Non-believers must be wiped out and Western civilization must be destroyed. She ultimately converted to Christianity, immigrated to the United States, and has now written a book, Wholly Different, Why I Choose Biblical Values Over Islamic Values. And we're pleased now to be joined by Nonie Darwish. Ms. Darwish, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Dan. Thank you.
So, I've just kind of quickly encapsulated your story, but it sounds like it's a lot more dramatic than I made it seem. So why don't you tell us about your upbringing and then your coming to America and your conversion to Christianity. Tell us your conversion story.
Well, I lived for 30 years in Cairo, Egypt. I grew up in the Gaza Strip, and really the heart of the Arab-Israeli conflict. And I lost my father to the jihad against Israel. And I moved to the United States at age 30. And I noticed that when I moved to America, I still considered myself a Muslim. I went to the mosque here in the early 80s, and I was told, don't assimilate in America. And that was so hard because not assimilating, believe it or not, takes more effort than assimilating. And I was shunned by the Islamic community for assimilating. So I started noticing that a lot of the values in the new society I'm living in are very different from what I learned in the Middle East. For instance, simple things like standing in line to take your turn, because over there people just step on each other to get what they want, So, for instance, in the churches, they say we're all sinners. In Islam, they are all sinners. Non-Muslims are all sinners. Jesus came to save us. In Islam, we have to save Allah and Muhammad's reputation by killing anybody who offends them or criticizes them or write a cartoon about them. Jesus died for us, and versus in Islam, we must die for Allah. We must die in the process of killing the enemies of Allah. Confession of sin is a biblical value versus concealment of sin in Islamic value. Actually, there is immunity from sin even to Muhammad, and even some sheikhs are immune from sin. Changing oneself is a biblical value. Self-control is a biblical value. But changing others, controlling others, is an Islamic value.
So,
yeah.
Noni, so I know some peaceful Muslims that are living here. They go to school with our kids. Do you think that they're secretly want us dead? Is that what the Quran says, convert or die?
I am not talking about people here because there's good and bad in every culture, absolutely. And I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about the values, the criteria, the measurement that Islamic books give for Muslims to follow. That is very different from my family in Egypt are still in Egypt. Of course, they don't talk to me anymore, but they're some of the nicest people you'll ever meet. So it's not people. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about if you open the Islamic books, that's what you read. That's the criteria.
So
vengeance is mine. That's the biblical value. In Islam, in the Quran, this is the quote. Vengeance is prescribed for Muslims.
So when you hear politicians in this country, for example, say that Islam is a religion of peace and we have to separate the religion from the radical Islamists, how do you react to those statements?
Well, there are many imams in Islam who disagree with the idea that Islam is a religion of peace. And they specifically say to the West that we want to be in permanent war with you. So while the Bible is a covenant of peace, Islam in the books is a covenant of war. The concept of jihad, and I will quote you from Islamic books, the concept of jihad is, the definition is to war with non-Muslims to establish the religion. And they teach it in Al-Azhar University as a permanent war institution with Jews, Christians, and pagans.
So I didn't get the last piece of your story, your exposure to Christianity and thus your ultimate decision to convert to Christianity.
Yes, that took me many, many years. I was in America at the beginning. I thought, I wanted to be a Muslim, but, the community didn't want you to assimilate. That's the first thing we were told, don't assimilate in America. And because I assimilated, I was shunned. So this is the problem. Even the Muslim mayor of London, his name is Khan, when he came to America to visit a few months ago, last year, he said, don't assimilate in America. Don't assimilate. He's telling Muslims not to assimilate.
But did you have somebody that introduced you to Christianity? I mean, obviously you understand it existed.
Well, when you live in America and you assimilate, you start having friends who are Christians. You start hearing sermons. And the first thing I heard that was so different was, we're all sinners. And I'm like, oh my God, in Islam, they tell us they are all sinners. We are Muslims. We don't talk about, we don't self-analyze. We don't check the sin in us. We check the sin in others.
But is there a passage in the Quran that says convert or die?
Yes, actually there are many. The Quran tells Muslims this is basic. This is basic education. And Muslims are supposed to not befriend even Jews and Christians, not befriend them, not just to convert them. Don't even make friendship unless you are a minority in a country. Then pretend you're friends as long as you.
Yep.
So this is all very, very different values.
Well, the word Islam, translated to English, means surrender or submission, doesn't it?
Exactly. And even the way we view God is different from viewing God in the Bible. God, God is died for us. In Islam, we must die for Allah.
So let me ask you this. Part of the argument that's been made in certain quarters is that we need to be careful about terminology because we don't want to engender the hatred or the mistrust of peaceful pluralist Muslims, not so much in America, which is where we always focus, or Western or Australia, but where the real action is, if you will, in North Africa to the Middle East to Central Asia. And I wonder what you say from somebody who spent the first 30 years of her life in Egypt and Gaza, what you say about the prospects for enlisting peaceful pluralist Muslims in those regions of the world such that we can really deal a death blow to the Islamic terrorist organizations like ISIS. How optimistic should we be about that possibility?
Well, the problem is that the West doesn't understand is the problem is a lot more than just ISIS and terrorism. The problem is the theology itself, the legal system, is opposite to the legal system in the West. A sin is punished under Islam. And, for instance, leaving Islam is punished by death. So in the West, the religious sin is not the job of the government to enforce it. It's the job of the government, of the Islamic government, to punish religious sin, such as leaving Islam. So that's something the West should worry about.
She is Nonie Darwish. She is the author of the book Wholly Different, Why I Chose Biblical Values Over Islamic Values. Gosh, I could talk to you about this topic for hours, but I appreciate your time, Ms. Darwish, and look forward to having you back on again. Thank you very much.
Anytime. Thank you.
And she joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.